Network Entertainment.
This is brought to you by Meralco.
Hello, listeners. Hello, everyone in PR and communications. Welcome to the Pioneer PRSP YouthCon in a podcast. This is Breaking Down the Buzz. And I am your host, Rochelle Gamboa, Crisis Management Head of SM Supermalls. Do you know that you're part of history? The PRSP YouthCon in the podcast is the first of its kind in the communications industry. Breaking Down the Buzz is in partnership with the Pod Network. This collaboration really shows how the different entities work together to create innovative ideas to reach more students and young professionals. By using these platforms like podcasts, PRSP and the Pod Network deliver learnings to a wider audience. Breaking Down the Buzz is a 12-part podcast series that tackles one different topic every podcast. The 12 topics are designed to be relevant to students and practitioners of PR and communications. Our discussions are current and fresh, and the talk points are direct, easy to digest, and very useful for school or your current work. In short, suitable for all young listeners, and best for all ages, right? So whether you're Gen Alpha, Gen Z, or Gen X, like us. So without further ado, let's get started. Today, our topic is advocacy, ESG, sustainability, and its effects on corporate branding. Our featured guests are today's heavyweight experts in this field with a combined experience of, 20 to 25 years in CSR and have seen the evolution of CSR in what is known today as ESG or PSG, no? To tell us more about it, we have the Executive Vice President and Chief Sustainability and Corporate Communications Officer of the Globe Group, Miss Yoli Crisanto. Welcome, Yoli.
Thanks, Rochelle. Thank you. And welcome, Abby.
Yes, and we also have the Assistant Vice President and Head of Customer Experience for Manila Water Services, Miss Abigail Ho Torres.
Hi, Shell. Hi, Ollie. Happy to be here.
Hi, good afternoon. So first up, no? Let's hear from both of you on how you, or maybe a little something about yourself first. It's been a long while.
Who gets to start?
I mean, I've known you for since we were babies.
Heavyweight.
Since we started,
I was cringing on the word heavyweight.
Since we started in this gig called PR. Since we
Okay.
started with the copy and paste pa lang. We've known each other that long, guys. So
Age matters, so I'll start.
let's
Yeah, okay. So as Rochelle said, so I had corporate communications and I also had sustainability at the Globe Group. So as you know, Globe is no longer just a telco, but we have evolved and pivoted from telco to techco. We are now a digital solutions platform. So we're engaged in so many businesses like fintech, health tech, ad tech, and we even have our own media agency, Chroma, etc. So in terms of ESG work, sustainability is quite new in Asia as a whole because it's been practiced a long time in Europe, then to the US, and Asia is just catching up. Okay, so for our company, I can say that we started doing ESG work as early as 2008, where the metrics then was just GRI. But as early as 2009, we were already doing external assurance. So in other words, when I talk about external assurance, it's somebody else looking at your work and verifying the work that you do, right? So today, how CSR evolved into ESG. We started early days philanthropy and then community building, diba? And then a lot of that stuff then became programs. And now sustainability or ESG is a totally whole new ballgame because this is all about disclosures. And one of the bigger things that you can see in terms of difference is that sustainability work really came from the finance team and the investor relations team, as opposed to community work where it really came from, maybe marketing, maybe customer service, diba? So if you're talking about ESG work, there's a lot of alphabet soup, we call it. There's a lot of things that you need to know in terms of metrics, in terms of frameworks, in terms of standards. And this time around, the beauty of it is globally, there are set standards. So you can't get away with what's only good for Philippines is Philippines. No. You need to follow global standards. Right? And so therefore, it's a little bit difficult. So I'll stop there. Give the floor to Abby.
Do you agree, Abby? It's difficult?
Yeah. So the difference with me is that you already read my title. I'm head of customer experience, so what does that have to do with sustainability? So in my previous roles, I think my first exposure to sustainability was prior to joining Maynilad. I used to be with a company called the British American Tobacco. So it's a United Kingdom based company that used to have a Philippine office. So I had no idea what sustainability meant. I thought at that time, and it's a common misconception that sustainability is more on the environmental, because it's like preserving your current natural resources for the next generations to enjoy. And I think that's where it started, and then it just stemmed to all aspects of operations. Like when I moved to Maynilad, I handled marketing and advocacy. And the advocacy arm of my team was one of the biggest contributors to our yearly sustainability report, because we handled all of the corporate social responsibility programs. And that was the main highlight of the sustainability report. And part of those programs were environmental programs. So my first real touch with sustainability in a more involved way was on the environmental side, and then the social development side. But when we started to really move into ESG, our parent company Metro Pacific is ahead of us. So each of the operating units are also trying to catch up as well. So Maynilad is also heavily into ESG now. The difference with as what Yoli mentioned, before the programs might be confined to a specific functional area, or with finance, because it's important also to investors to know that you're gonna be sustainable for the long haul if they're gonna plunk money into you, right? But now it's become a whole of organization approach, and in our case, since we belong in a conglomerate, it's a whole of conglomerate approach. So everything that we're doing is also evaluated through the external assurances that's being done, the external assurance audits. So we have our own for the organization. The parent company has its own, and we're also involved. The data that we're compiling from the different functional areas are
For one group report.
yes. So it's collated for our own report, for the parent report. We have other shareholders, so the data is also given to them. It's reflected in their own reports. So it's become a whole of organization thing. It's not just confined to the environmental group.
Okay.
You're handling the tree planting and the coastal cleanup, or the social development aid for the poor. Now we have sustainability in operations, because we're heavily dependent on natural resources. Water is a finite resource, so if we're not able to preserve it, then we're out of business. So in my case, in customer experience, one of our pillars is actually excellent customer experience as a utility. So that's actually one of the sustainability pillars for Maynilad. And so when I transitioned to operations, it's as if I brought some of my functions from when I was doing advocacy. Still one of the data handlers for the sustainability report, one of the contributors to formulating and implementing the sustainability strategy. So yeah, it's become a whole of organization
Okay.
approach. It permeates the entire being of your company. It's
Wow.
not just really just one or two or three functional areas now.
It does sound like heavyweight work, no? So let's try to make it fun. Because our listeners are Gen Zs and Alphas, Gen Alpha. So if there's anything that you can, if there's any value that these two generations put on sustainability, it's actually become, they want it to become their lifestyle. They buy stuff. We know for a fact that they consume goods if you're if you have a good citizenship record. If the company if the coffee I'm drinking is involved in a country that funds wars, they will actually boycott it, no? So what they would like to hear, of course, is it fun? Is it fun work for you? What's the fun side of this work in corporate, how do we call this? In advocacy marketing, if we can use the term.
It's one of the tenets of work is, if you're passionate about what you're doing, it's actually fun all the way around, and it doesn't feel like work. Right?
Well,
So,
very well said. Yeah.
yeah. So, like in my case, for instance, I'm actually very passionate about being of service to others, trying to make a difference, trying to make an impact. So for me and for a lot of people in Globe actually who are involved in sustainability, and all of us are now, like what Abby said, it's a whole of conglomerate, a whole of organization approach. It actually feels the purpose in what you're doing. And it's very, very fascinating, diba? Parang, you feel so good because you know that you're impacting people, you're impacting your customers, and you're doing good even for the next generation. Sometimes, when you say things like this, it's a little bit cheesy, you don't believe it. But actually, that's the beauty of it, because kami, the people that are practicing, we know that we're putting a lot of hard work into making sure that the data that we are gathering and the data that we are monitoring is actually very factual and real.
Evidence-based.
It's evidence-based. It's science-based. And
cannot-
science doesn't lie.
Just because we're in PR doesn't give us a license to be
That's
to
correct.
do greenwash.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No claims whatsoever if there is no data to back that up. So the hard work that you put in it, plus the heart that you feel because of the impact that you're creating, it's very purposeful work.
Inspiring.
Yes.
Yeah, and we've become also very conscious about how we measure the impact of the programs. So gone are the days when you just maybe count how many people participated or attended your event, if you're mounting one in the community, for example. So now, before you actually execute the program, there's a lot more planning involved, especially since other functional areas tend to also be involved. So it's not just you anymore in CSR or Corpcom or external affairs, etc., doing that. So you become more conscious as well in how you work with your internal stakeholders so that you're able to capture their objectives and translate that into something that's meaningful. For example, a social development program. You know that when you're a company still, so you still have your enterprise objectives or your company objectives to fulfill, but at the same time, how do you align your company objectives with the social development goals that you also would like to contribute to, right? So there's a lot of alignment, and then you become more conscious of how you measure your success. So again, it's not just attendance, but how do I impact the lives of these people that we are helping? If we're capacity building, what is the long-term impact on their family? What's the multiplier effect in the community? So it's all those things. So
But it's not a difficult goal, because all three of us come from the biggest conglomerates in the country, and we're lucky to be working in a company that are able to allocate these resources. The downside is the perception of corporate greed. That's why authenticity in advocacy, CSR and advocacy is really very important. How do you balance authenticity with profitability, and how do you effectively communicate this to the public?
You never do anything without data to back you up. That's authenticity, right? Like I said earlier, don't there's a lot of issue going on right now in this space called greenwashing and greenhushing. Greenhushing is you don't want to talk about it anymore, right? Because you don't like to be subjected to what cancel culture or whatever, right? And greenwashing is even worse. Greenwashing is, you keep talking and talking and talking, but you're not doing anything, right? So I think essentially, if you stay true to the discipline, it's science-based, it's evidence-based, right? And it's data-driven. That is at the core of sustainability, the disclosure.
Do you have a specific program that you can share with the audience?
Oh, there's a lot of programs right now. We have
for Globe. What's your biggest?
For Globe, what we're doing right now is we call it Hapag Movement. Hapag Movement is a hunger feeding program. And to make it more sustainable, you just don't feed families, but you also teach them and upskill them. So the same families that you feed are the same families that you teach and upskill. And then you go to so many different places like BARMM, which not a lot of people go to BARM, right? Because you know what goes on there, right? And some other areas. The thing is with LGU, when you're talking about feeding program, sometimes they resist you, because they said, no, there's no hunger here. But that statistics tell you, and again, science-based and evidence-based, that there are incidences of hunger even in Metro Manila. Right? So we try to get donations. We have partners because we're corporate. We're not a foundation. We cannot get donations, diba? So what we do is when we create a campaign, we put out there up front our implementing partners, Ayala Foundation, Sutsi, and World Vision and all the rest, right? Because these foundations, they are the one that implement on the ground, finding the families, working even with the SWD, finding families, finding the poorest of the poor and feeding them. So that's just one of the many things.
Well aware.
We're talking about digitalization when you're talking about Globe, because everything that we do is online, right? So one of the bigger things that we're doing in Globe is actually filtering cybersecurity, data privacy. Connected to this is online sexual abuse of children. Do you know that the Philippines has the highest incidence of OSAIC globally?
What do you do about it?
What do you do about it? You block the URLs. You try to work. We work with the PNP and cybercrime group. We look at the sites. We block the sites. We invest in filtering systems in the network so that your broadband at home, your Globe at home, will not be fed with OSAIC material. Your mobile data on your device will not be fed with OSAIC material. That's technology, use of technology to help solve or help address a social issue. And that social issue is real.
That's heavy.
There's a lot.
That's heavy stuff.
So what's the fun side? Okay, Abby, how does on the part of Manila, perhaps you can also share what the Metro Pacific Group is doing on demonstrating authenticity while it's driving profitability, and how do you effectively communicate this?
Okay, so when I was still head of advocacy, what I would tell my team always is that we don't do philanthropy. It's not handing out or giving dole outs, right? We're doing sustainable advocacy. So you're advocating for something. You're advocating for social development, for some sort of change, and you want it to be sustainable, meaning it has to be part of your value chain. So I'm an advocate of that in particular, that the programs that you're ruling out should be part of the entire value chain of your organization. Otherwise, it won't be sustainable. So for us, what I can say would be the biggest program that we have is what we call the Water for the Poor. So this is a program that predates me and my stint in Maynilad and in advocacy and marketing. We have two programs called Samahang Tubig Maynilad and Pag-asa sa Patubig program. So essentially it's the same. There are communities that cannot get connected to our service because they don't have proof of ownership, which is a requirement for you to be able to secure your electric power or your water connection. So these are people in the informal sector mostly. So what we did was to align with our regulator so that we're not really encouraging informal settling, but we're trying to be humane because there are people who really have no choice, right? So what we did was we provided bulk meter. So we gave them an account. It has to be managed by a group of people in the community, usually the homeowners association or like a cooperative or one of the community organizations there. So we engage with them. We teach them how to be able to manage the distribution, the billing, how they sell the water in the community. So they become the operator in the community. And then we provide the service, even if supposedly they won't be able to access it any other way due to the ownership issue. And we have this approved. The communities that we include in this program are approved by our regulator, the MWSS. So that's what we've been doing for the past so many years. The Pag-asa sa Patubig partnerships is the same model, but it's managed by an implementing partner because it's difficult for us to be the ones also fronting in the community.
You have a program that won a lot of awards, the Cubeta Award.
Yeah,
Cubeta,
okay.
what is?
Right,
I've always been
okay,
curious
alright.
about this.
So that was my baby. So that's not something that I inherited from my predecessor. So one of the opportunities that we saw in Maynilad was wastewater management. A lot of people, not just customers, but the general public did not know what wastewater management was. I did not know that prior to joining Maynilad, but if you're familiar with your septic tank or Pozo Negro and it has to be cleaned or dislodged, sisip-sipin ang Pozo Negro, that's wastewater management. People are not aware, one, that it's important because if your septic tank overflows, it can contaminate your groundwater system and then we'll drink that contamination.
It goes back to you.
It goes back to you. There are health issues that go with it, right? So that's wastewater management. They're not aware that there's a need for that, and two, they're not aware that Maynilad is offering it. There's I won't mention the brand, but there's a top of mind name when you say septic tank cleaning or Pozo Negro. I think baka the younger set might not be familiar, but people of a certain age would be familiar with that name that starts with an M. I'm not gonna mention the brand, but you relate it with the Pozo Negro. So there was an opportunity because in the course of our consumer insighting, we saw that when we showed them the concept of wastewater management and we explained to our respondents what that was, there was a shift in perception of the company. So our service is not perfect. There are areas where we are unable to provide still the steady water service. But as soon as they find out that we're treating the wastewater before discharging it back to the water bodies, they're like, oh really, you do that? That's amazing. That's health for the environment, etc. And then there's a sudden shift in perception. So I wanted to take advantage of that white space for us na nobody else is claiming. So that was how the Cubeta Philippines campaign was born. And under it are Cubeta Talks. So this is more focused on commercial and industrial entities to connect to our sewer network, so they don't need to be sip-sip or dislodged because they're automatically connected, so okay na siya. And then Golden Cubeta Awards, which is the Greater Awareness Building Campaign. So it's just a crowdsourced, social media driven beauty pageant of your cubetas.
Which doesn't necessarily have to be within just your
Yes,
concession
it's
area.
nationwide actually.
That's the beauty of,
The
advocacy.
first year that we ran it, we had finalists from Baguio, from Palawan, from Iloilo. And not all the time. The winners don't always come from our service area. So we had a winner from Antipolo. That's our the other side. The other side of the concession. But
Shall I dare
that's
say
her
the
side.
name?
yeah, but the last time that we did the big Golden Cubeta Awards, we had a category for schools, universities, and colleges, and there was a really tough battle between UP Diliman, one of the comfort rooms in UP Diliman, and FEU Manila. And we could see the engagement. It was amazing. The alumni were tagging people, vote for this. And I want to also create the awareness that wastewater management is important. Look what happened to Boracay.
Yeah,
That's a wastewater management
true.
issue. And people are not aware. Manila Bay, the Manila Bay cleanup, that's also a wastewater management issue.
And I think to answer your question, Rochelle, you're asking, so where's the fun? So the
That's
fun,
what this. I was going to go back to that
so
question.
the fun
I
is
wanted-
really looking at your program that you launched, being successful, creating impact, And in Hapag, for instance, we partnered with chefs, gourmet chefs. Can you imagine?
Amazing.
Of course, because, it's a feeding program. So they create menus and then proceeds of those menu goes to Hapag. So the partnerships that work with us, that's where the fun is. And never forget the communication side. It's always fun.
It is.
Yes,
And I'm
it
sure you've inspired a lot of the young today to get into the corporate advocacy work. But how do they start? Can you share any hacks on how one can start their career in this field?
Look for your passion point. I think, diba, we were talking about authenticity earlier. Nothing beats like starting from yourself. What are you passionate about? What do you like doing? Because if you get into the space that you like doing this, it's not gonna feel like work. Again, I go back to that. Then find your purpose. There's always something there for you to do. Diba? And siguro, syempre, like any corporate individual or like any person who does a good job, syempre, the things like work discipline and all of that stuff, right? But it pays to have a good background in terms of your corporate life. I mean, if the company, like you said, diba, if the company that you're working for is really into it, kasi
Like Ayala, Metro Pacific Group,
Diba?
SM.
diba?
That's
Kasi the culture is real.
Yes.
You feel it eh. You feel it even if you go out. Kahit na any other company within the conglomerate that you deal with, we all think the same. Diba? So, we all know that this is important. And that's what keeps you going. It motivates you. Eh kung hindi ibibigyan ng importansya, syempre, diba? Bakit natin ito ginagawa? Diba? So, it's important that you find a good company, diba? That you can grow in and who believes in what you're doing.
For my part, siguro I started my career as a journalist, and that's still my longest love affair. I stayed there for 11 years.
Inquirer
and
for 11 years.
So yeah, I was with the Inquirer for 11 years, and I think that really laid the foundation for me, not just opened doors because of the network, no, but the training that I was able to get as a journalist. So as a journalist, you have to be really inquisitive. You have to do a lot of research because you want to churn out accurate stories. But you also need to be quick because there are deadlines every day, right? So now in my work, even when I moved to corporate and I started doing government affairs work, and then marketing and advocacy, and now customer experience, I'm really a data geek. So that's very helpful. I like looking at various data sets, looking at the data points, how they intersect, and then how do I translate that into something that addresses a particular need in the company. For example, that in my advocacy work, how does that address how do these address a social need that can still connect with the enterprise objective. So I'm what I can say would be a hack, or hindi siya hack pero be curious and be inquisitive. So part of being inquisitive is also talking to people like Yoli, Rochelle, and all of the ayoko sabihin veterans all of the heavyweight.
Be a member of PRSP.
That's right. So you talk to people in the organization. It doesn't matter if the functional area is something that you don't really usually interface with. In fact, it's better because you get to know how the other functions work. And sometimes those are the things that spark an idea that can be translated pala into something na a program, for example, that you can run within your jurisdiction. Diba? So when you talk to people from wastewater management, that's how it started. It started with talking to observing FGDs, looking at quantitative customer insights, and then talking to the people handling it in operations, and then knowing their pain points. So you just maybe put them all together, and the puzzle starts to come together, and you see this picture, and then you have that program, and then you start getting the results. So be inquisitive, be curious. There's no such thing as a bad idea. Of course, some ideas cost a lot of money, no? That if you fail, there's a huge economic impact. But don't be afraid to fail, well, within reason. But don't be afraid to fail, because you're not always going to be successful the first time around. But that becomes a springboard for you to launch the next most successful program for the year for the company, for example. You never know. So just talk to people, read whatever literature, and just don't be afraid to put those ideas out there. You never know what will be the next best thing, at least in your team or your company.
But where do
right?
they exactly start? In SM Supermalls, if they join SM Supermalls, they can either start. We have a team that is dedicated to just creating programs for sustainability. But where do they start with their career now? In SM Supermalls, we're set up in a way that the development of the programs is different from the group that actually markets and communicates the programs that we have. So we have the sustainability group. They can come in and start as sustainability officers. And we also have the SM Cares group, where they can start as junior marketing officers. They take care of the events, they take care of the press releases, covering the different programs we have for the environment. No? We have energy efficiency, where we have the electric vehicles. We promote electric mobility. We have the wastewater management program, or rather the water management program, where we have water recycling in the malls, water filtration. You can actually, the rainwater we collected can actually be consumed already.
Yeah.
We have that. We've started that in SM Baguio, and then there are other entities in the SM group that also have their own sustainability teams. I wonder what it's like in the Ayala and the Metro Pacific or Manila.
Oh my God. So if you're talking about sustainability team, each company in the Ayala group has their own sustainability team. Now, in Globe, because we are also a conglomerate in our own right, each portfolio company will have its own team, right? So if you're looking at Telco Globe, just the telecom, we are the sustainability team. So we have a sustainability council in Ayala, and we have a sustainability council in the Globe group, plus another sustainability council with Singtel, because Globe has two owners, right? And so therefore, there's a lot of exchanging of notes and best practices all across all three of us, right? So if you want to start, if you want to apply, all you need to do is go to our website, It's all there. I mean, just put in what kind of work you like, and you don't need to get into the sustainability team just to be able to practice sustainability, because today it's in every part of the organization. So even if you go to HR, for instance, there is a sustainability champion inside HR, right? So in the business, on mobile, on consumer mobile, on broadband, all of them have their own sustainability champions. So anybody, you're welcome to join us.
Thank you, Yoli and
Yeah,
Abby.
just like following up on that, you really don't have to start in the space right away. Like myself, I was in government affairs, and when I was doing all of the corporate affairs work, because I was at one point an individual contributor who handled policy policy influencing, but also doing internal communication, CSR, media relations, etc. That was my first brush with sustainability. What's this? I did not even have an idea. So there's always an opportunity, since it's become a whole of organization thing already. So wherever you are in the organization, if you want to get into sustainability, wherever you are, you can be a part of it. But I think a good jump off point would be if you were a comms person. If you're a comms person, because communicating sustainability is of primary importance. So you communicate with your communities, your external communities, you communicate with your internal stakeholders. A lot of them still do not understand what sustainability is or what ESG is. So you communicate internally, you communicate with your shareholders, and then you communicate with your external assurance auditors. So a lot of it is really communication. You package your sustainability report, or now your integrated report. So that's communication. So if you're into comms, there's a big chance that you'll do well when you shift focus into sustainability. And then if you're doing events, there's also a good chance that you'll have a go at sustainability, because a lot of it is also program based.
Thank you, Abby and Yoli, for making it sound very inspiring and fun to join the field, no? I'm sure there'll be a lot. You'll get CVs. Expect a lot of CVs coming your way towards the first graduation season. So
I hope so.
there's a considering that this generation, the graduating class next year and onwards, they're very very conscious about the environment, and they're very conscious about the waste they're producing. My niece, who just graduated from college, would make it a point to go to SM every week and bring her plastic during plastics collection day. So you don't have to tell them; it just comes naturally for them. And the choices they make every day, it's all green choices, no? So thank you very much for your time. And that's a wrap for the episode of Breaking Down the Buzz, the PRSP YouthCon in a podcast in partnership with the Pod Network, a pioneer 12-episode series designed for students and young practitioners of PR and communications. We hope that you learned something from Abby and Yoli, and join us for the next episode as we continue to create online discussions on the topics and touch points that matter. Thank you to Ms. Yoli Crisanto, Executive Vice President and Chief Sustainability and Corporate Communications Officer of the Globe Group, and Ms. Abigail Ho Torres, Assistant Vice President, Head Customer Experience of My Needed Water Services, for gracing this thought-provoking podcast episode. Your corporate journey, the brand narrative, the awe-inspiring stories you've shared on advocacy, CSR, ESG, and how this affects corporate identity. These learning sessions are created and organized by the Public Relations Society of the Philippines Education Committee. For further information on this podcast series, visit prsp.ph. Thank you to the new channel for tokens. And the wonderful surprises await lucky podcast listeners, so don't miss an episode. Find out more at prsp.ph. Finally, PRSP and the Pod Network thank all our listeners. We hope we shared some value to our chosen profession of PR and communications. I'm Rochelle Gamboa, your host, wishing you to start making your passions your advocacy. Purpose and passion, as Miss Yoli has said it. Take it to the next level. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Yoli.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual. The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.